This is a Dragon Blazer production, and I am the little boogeyman.
All right.
Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling Apologist. I am your host, Steven. And since I'm having a problem with my co-host from my other show, bringing his little daughters into our fights, I have with me my little helper to join me in that fight, little Craig.
Okay, I guess that's a way to do an intro. Yes, if you're confused, as you should be, I decided, since it is the spooky Halloween season, to do the most terrifying thing I could possibly think of to you, my faithful listeners, and that is to have Steven host the podcast this week.
That's correct. I'm taking over hosting duties tonight. So what's your win of the week, Craig?
Oh, this isn't really a week for wins for me.
I don't think
it's been a rough one.
Yeah.
I guess Fargo's been good.
I'm still behind on that. I think I've watched 2 episodes of it so far.
It's my win of the week. It's Fargo.
Yeah. Yeah, I started a new job. I guess that would be my win of the week. So since I'm hijacking the meat of the podcast, do you have a
PWA WTF Hall of Fame?
I certainly do, Stephen. So it's Halloween time of the year, you know. You dress up in various costumes, and there's the thing about being a wrestling fan is it's almost like it's Halloween all the time in the world of wrestling. We've had our great gimmicks and costumes throughout history, and tonight my PWA WTF Hall of Famer is one of those crazy costume gimmicks. After spending some time in a dead tag team with William Regal, a disgruntled wrestler by the name of Paul Burchill. Remember Paul Burchill?
I loved Paul Burchill.
Well, Paul Burchill told network representative Paul Mercannon that he no longer wanted to be a tag team with Regal. During this discussion, Burchill informed Cannon that his family heritage traces back to the pirate Blackbeard, and he wanted to do a pirate gimmick on SmackDown. They approved, and the following week, he followed through on this promise when he appeared backstage dressed as a pirate with a look similar to that of Johnny Depp's character from the Pirates of the Caribbean film series. William Regal tried to convince Burchill to return to his former ruthless gimmick, but Burchill refused, as he had tasted the life of a pirate, and it tasted good. Burchill had his first match as a pirate on the edition of SmackDown on 10th of March 2006, making an elaborate entrance by swinging down to the floor on a rope. Burchill defeated Regal using his finisher, the C4, which was renamed the Walking Plank. After Regal continued to persuade Burchill to return to his former gimmick, the two were booked in a match where the loser would be forced to wear the winner's choice of clothing. Burchill won the match, forcing Regal to dress at his whim until Burchill lost another match, initially dressing him as a buxom wench, and later in various costumes such as a chicken suit and a gorilla suit. Eventually, he made Regal dress up like a buccaneer to team with him against the team known as Gemini. Burchill ended up abandoning Regal during the match, which led to Gemini picking up the victory. By early June, Burchill's popular pirate gimmick came to an end when Mark Henry, who was going on a rampage, defeated Burchell and assaulted him afterwards, resulting in him being stretchered out. The time away from the ring was also used to develop a new gimmick to replace his pirate gimmick when he returned. And this was allegedly done because Vince McMahon reportedly was not aware of the Pirates of the Caribbean film series. Because he's just too busy for that shit, I guess. And he believed the character should have thought he was a real pirate and been less animated, and felt it could not work as a crowd favorite. Despite the positive crowd reactions that Burchell received, Vince just wasn't a fan of it. So you might ask, what was Vince McMahon's definitely better idea for Paul Burchell after his days of pirating ended? He was paired with a manager, a woman by the name of Katie Lee, who he was romantically involved with. She was also his sister.
That died. All right.
That's right. He started plundering his siblings' booty. That gimmick didn't last for some reason. It was pretty much immediately dropped, and eventually the pair sailed off into the sunset. But their legend lives on in the PWA WTF Hall of Fame.
Oh, I'm so glad we've added incest to this Hall of Fame.
I'm going down my I'm trying to get bingo on my list of terrible. We've got the N-word, we've got a Nazi, we got Michael Cole getting raped, and I just got to cross incest off of my.
What's next?
I don't know. I guess I don't want to spoil the surprise.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a fantastic Hall of Fame.
Sure was.
On today's episode, we are going to be talking about one of the weirdest and craziest people to lace up a pair of wrestling boots, and his gimmick was creepy too. I'm talking about Martin Wright, better known as the Boogeyman.
Yes.
Wright was born July 15th, 1964 in Phoenix, Arizona. He is 6'2" and weighed around 260 pounds when he was in WWE. He started his professional wrestling career as a contestant on season 4 of WWE's Tough Enough.
Yes.
A reality show competition that tried to find new wrestlers. He attended a 2-day event in California on October 15, 2004, where he was one of 8 finalists. Another contestant from that season was Ryback.
Yeah.
And Wright had...
He was Skip Sheffield at the time, I believe.
Oh, yeah. He was.
Yeah.
And Wright had an interview with Ryback on his show. Ryback has a podcast or a show. And he interviewed Wright, and he talked about this time on Tough Enough. This is what Wright had to say about it. I remember my whole thing was I was already trying to operate under co-ed operations. Like, this is do or die. And a train of mind that I was in, because if you recall, I had a radio set. I had some headphones on, and the funny thing about my headsets, the fucker didn't work, said Wright. I just had my headset on, pretending I was listening to music, and in all actuality, I was listening to every motherfucker, what he was talking about and what they were saying about me. So the strategy I had there and the train of mind that I had there, I went there game face on because I knew the odds were against me. I knew I lied. I fabricated on my application just to get in. But I knew I was physically capable enough, and not only that, but I really wanted this shit. Oh, that's right. Wright lied about his age.
Yes, that's one thing I always remembered about Boogeyman, Marty Wright, is that he lied about his age to get onto the show, and
Yeah. The cutoff age for Tough Enough was 35, and he claimed he was a 30-year-old. He was 40 at the time.
yeah,
When he admitted his real age, he was cut from the competition. Wright wasn't happy about it, and in that same interview, he says, "The funny thing was later that evening when they made the cuts and they said I was eliminated after that shit, the next day or whatever, they picked the title at one night and they come back and announce who's going to do this and do that. When they told me that shit, that was a heartbreaker. It was a heartbreak. So now you got all these other guys getting on the fucking bus, and if you recall, he was talking to Ryback. I didn't leave. I didn't fucking leave. I stayed around, walked around, and I was like, fuck that. So Fit Finley and John Laurinaitis came over to me, and I addressed the issue and pleaded my case. And they said, well, get on the bus. And I told him, well, Wright told them, I ain't getting on no fucking bus. Everybody on that bus is a fucking loser. I didn't lose. I didn't lose shit. And if I get on that bus and accept that fact, okay, I'm going to sit out. Fuck that. Wright was a persistent
I'm realizing that that Marty has a crutch word.
Yeah, perhaps. But yeah, he was a persistent bastard, and luckily for him, WWE was still interested in him and invited him to Ohio Valley Wrestling, where they developed new wrestlers.
Yeah, that was basically what the Performance Center is now. It was their feeder system back then for many years. All of our greats of the last 20 years came from Ohio Valley. John Cena, Batista.
Yep.
They all came up from Ohio Valley.
Well, apparently he dealt with some things at Ohio Valley Wrestling for being a black man. How dare he be black? But luckily he had help from another wrestler, Beth Phoenix. Here's what he said about Phoenix in that same interview on the Ryback show. I'll never forget what Beth Phoenix said to me, and it was quite obvious there was some racial slurs from others. There were some racial references, and I'm not talking about them. I'm just telling you the plain-ass truth. I was speaking the truth. Anyways, Beth said to me, Marty, don't you worry. I never forgot. I walked into the store, and she says, Marty, don't you worry. And she was still trying to get a contract. She was still working in developmental class, and she says, Marty, don't you worry. Don't you worry about it. One day you will have the last laugh. I'll never forget it. And that, for her, for me to identify, I didn't even know Beth.
Wow.
I personally found that to be a nice story, and she was right. Wright would have the last laugh. A very creepy laugh.
Very, yeah.
In his OVW debut on June 25th, 2005, he wrestled a dark match where he tagged with Robbie Dauber and faced Seth Skyfire and Robert Fury. He beat the shit out of all
legends in the business.
Yes. He beat the shit out of all three men and no-selled the offensive Skyfire. For those who don't know what a no-sell is, that's when a wrestler acts like the moves put on him doesn't hurt him. He announced that he was the Boogeyman. Before leaving the arena, he became a monster face and would appear and attack any wrestler that said his name.
Kind of like inspired by the Candyman.
Yeah.
Theme.
Yeah. On the July 11, 2005 episode of Raw, horror movie-style vignettes began airing to promote the debut of the Boogeyman. After a few weeks, the vignettes were moved from Raw to SmackDown, but the planned debut was delayed when Wright hyperextended both knees and needed time to recover. He finally made his debut on the October 14, 2005 episode of SmackDown. The storyline referenced to vignettes months ago as promos for a television series on the network called The Boogeyman. The show was canceled before it could air, but they still had Wright under contract. So he was brought to SmackDown to wrestle. The Boogeyman then proceeded to recite a modified version of the chant, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah, I remember this stuff. Yeah.
That's from the movie Nightmare on Elm Street, as
Yeah.
many probably already knew. Before smashing an over.
How did his chant go? It was like 1, 2, he's coming for you or something. How did Boogeyman's chant
go? I want
go?
to say I don't remember. I think it was like 1, 2 boogies coming for you, something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember. I remember they were just kind of knocking off of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. He would do the chant before smashing an oversized alarm clock on his head.
Yeah.
For the next few weeks, the Boogeyman appeared in unexpected places backstage, closets, fans, etc., reciting different nursery rhymes and holding up clocks before screaming his catchphrase, "I'm the Boogeyman, and I'm coming to get ya!" And he laughed maniacally.
And I remember he had, like, his front teeth were missing.
Yes.
and yeah, it was. Yeah, he definitely had a presentation about him.
Yeah. At Survivor Series, the Boogeyman helped SmackDown General Manager Theodore Long defeat his Raw counterpart, Eric Bischoff. He made his official in-ring debut on the December 2nd episode of SmackDown, defeating Simon Dean in a squash match. I do not remember Simon Dean.
I do. Yeah, I remember Simon Dean. He's pretty unremarkable, but I remember Simon Dean.
During his match, he took a handful of live worms from his pocket, stuffed them into his mouth, and just let them
munch. Chowed down on him.
Over the next few weeks, Boogeyman's opponents were generally destroyed in the ring, left with worms in their mouths and or spit on their faces. Which is just delicious.
Pretty
lovely.
In the days of COVID, that's really hard to look back on.
Yeah, Boogeyman wouldn't work right now. His official.
He'd have to come with his worms prepackaged and cleaned. He'd have to open up his package of worms.
Yes. His official pay-per-view debut was December's Armageddon, when he came to the ring to confront Vito and Nunzio, who were dressed as Santa Claus and an elf. So fun times.
The FBI, they were the fully blooded Italians. That was their name. Carry on.
Boogeyman's first major feud occurred with John Bradshaw Layfield and his fixer, Jillian Hall. And it began when he stalked the duo throughout a number of shows. During the January 6th episode of SmackDown, he caught a fleeing Hall and shoved worms down the back of her skirt. On the January 13th taping of SmackDown during a Piper's Pit segment, the Boogeyman not only sniffed a growth on Jillian's face.
Yes. Let me interject. That was Jillian Hall. Do you remember this?
I watched it. I watched
gimmick. For some reason, she always had this giant mole on her face.
Oh, yeah.
And that was their way of writing the mole off of her, was what you're about to mention.
Well, he licked it.
Yeah.
And then he bit it off and ate it while JBL looked on in horror.
just bit a mole right off of her face.
Yep.
Just ripped it off and started munching down. Yes, I remember.
It was a really cheesy looking prosthetic, but still pretty damn disgusting.
It was pretty disgusting.
Then the Boogeyman faced JBL at the Royal Rumble, and he won it in under 2 minutes.
He won. Oh, he won the match against JBL.
Yeah.
I misunderstood. I thought you were saying he won the Royal Rumble. I'm like, that is some revisionist history. Okay,
No, he beat JBL at Royal Rumble.
I misheard you. Yes.
After defeating the Dicks in a handicap match on the February 24th episode of SmackDown, the Boogeyman dumped a bucket of worms on the announce table, frightening special guest commentators Booker T and his wife Sharmell.
Yeah.
The Boogeyman subsequently began to stalk Booker T and Sharmell over the next few weeks. He and Booker T were set to face off on the March 18th Saturday night's main event 32. But the match was canceled due to Booker T faking a knee injury to escape competition. The feud eventually culminated at WrestleMania 22nd, with the Boogeyman defeating Booker T and Sharmell in a handicap match. During the match, Boogeyman planted a big kiss on Sharmell with a mouthful of worms. It was cute. It was pretty nice. The match had to be cut short because of a biceps tear at a house show. That to explain his absence to rehab his injury, Booker T and Sharmell obtained a restraining order against the Boogeyman on the April 7th episode of SmackDown. As SummerSlam approached, the Boogeyman began appearing in TV spots to promote the event. Vignettes also began airing advertising his return to SmackDown. On September 20th, WWE.com reported that Wright had been released from the company.
No.
However, on October 6th, WWE.com announced that Wright had re-signed with the company. And
Yay!
And would be said to be trained at Booker T and Stevie Ray's wrestling school in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, that was one thing. He always had a great presentation, but he was never a great wrestler.
No, he wasn't.
And I remember that he was sent back to wrestling school to try to hone those skills a little bit upon his return.
Yeah. Wright returned on the October 27th episode of SmackDown, attacking and spitting worms into the faces of The Miz and Crystal Marshall. During the feud, he again terrorized and stalked his opponents and eventually ended The Miz's undefeated streak at the Armageddon pay-per-view on December 17th.
Oh.
Wright then feuded with Fit Finlay, who ended the...
I think he wasn't he just Finlay at this point?
He might have been. Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah, I think he was Fit Finlay in WCW, and I think for the majority of his WWE career, he was just known as Finlay.
Yeah, he was just Finlay, who ended the Boogeyman's undefeated streak when Hornswoggle interfered. Little bastard.
Yeah, he was.
I think he was called Little
I forgot
Bastard.
he was known. He was known as Little Bastard back then. Yeah.
On the February 2nd edition of SmackDown, during a match against Chris Benoit for the WWE United States Championship, Boogeyman abducted Hornswoggle, distracting Finlay and giving Benoit a chance to win the match with a roll-up. On the February 16th edition of SmackDown, the Boogeyman appeared with a little person of his...
Was that Benoit's finisher?
Was it the finish? No, because no one has a finisher that's a roll-up.
Because nobody's finisher is a roll-up. Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that. All right.
On the February 16th edition of SmackDown, the Boogeyman appeared with a little person of his own, just like I did tonight. The little Boogie.
I'm gonna bite your ass if you keep that up. Don't make me chase you around catering and bite your ass.
Little Boogeyman, who was portrayed by an actor named Chris Hollyfield. Chris also previously had played Little Booker T. His purpose was to counteract Hornswoggle, who was proving a problem in one-on-one matches with Finlay. The Boogeyman and the Little Boogeyman lost to Finley and Hornswoggle in a mixed tag team match at No Way Out. The team lost.
We're big fans of Little Boogeyman here and PWA.
The team lost a rematch.
In fact, you heard Little Boogeyman's voice at the beginning of this podcast, as you do every week.
And you're about to hear him again. The
right.
team lost a rematch the following week on SmackDown. Little Boogeyman was pinned by Finley after Wright had chased away Hornswoggle. As you have mentioned, I had an interview with Chris Hollyfield. He is
an
amazing guy. It was on my other show, the Rage and Blaze show. Me and my brother Rage interviewed him. I can't say enough good things about the guy. He was just awesome.
It was really nice.
And as I just mentioned, I would like to play a little clip from the interview.
Okay.
And boy, I tell you, when they hit your mouth, it was, it's like, like almost like alpha salsa hitting water. They dry up so fast from your saliva. I mean, it's like, whoa, where'd they go? And when they dry up, they get wild in your mouth. They get to move. It's like they need that moisture, and that saliva just kind of, I don't know, just draws them up. And they get to going, moving your tongue around.
Yeah.
Hey, get back over here. Because it's not like you can get your fingers and move them around, because you're in character. So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
And it just was, from that point, it was just all she wrote. You just put them in your mouth, and people thought, they like, oh man, you put worms in your mouth, you're nasty. I hope you brush your teeth after that.
Hey, I would do it if I got on WWE myself, so I don't blame you.
Exactly.
I'm for it.
Exactly.
So did Boogeyman kind of give you any advice before you put it in your mouth, or did
he said just don't swallow them?
Just don't swallow.
That was the only thing he said.
It's good advice.
He said, don't swallow them, because you're talking about, you'd be in the office quite a bit if you swallow them.
So I'm sure that you didn't just wrestle as Booker T and Boogeyman. What other promotions were you in, and what was your main gimmick or main wrestling persona in those promotions?
But my main gimmick was Little Boogeyman. That was my biggest ever. That was the biggest, because when I first came in with Lord Littlebrook, I was Little Tiger.
Little Tiger.
Yeah. That was grand opening, grand closing. That was like, nobody knows about Little Tiger. I had leopard little shorts, print, leopard print.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then I was on the independent circuit. And I don't even know, it was just different promoters that would call Lord Littlebrook, and we would do a lot of, the fairgrounds, state fairs, and
interact instead of just trying to remember something that happened 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
So it helps. I cheated. I just searched Little Boogeyman. They just sent me all the clips, all the matches you were in. I watched all your clips. I watched a couple of your matches. We watched the Fit Finley and Hornswoggle match.
No Way Out. You were at a pay-per-view, man.
No Way Out.
Yeah.
Pay-per-view. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that was nice. And then WrestleMania too, because we did that small skit with Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. I watched that where you came out. You and Boogeyman came out behind Donald Trump. Donald Trump did not give a crap. He was not scared at all.
No. And it's funny. He just the way he was on set, he's the way he is right now. So it's like, and I'll tell you a story. And again, a lot of people don't know about it because they weren't there. We were shooting that, and we only did one take. And in production, when you do something off screen, they normally do 2 or 3 takes just to have, backup.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you guys know, you're doing the podcast, you edit stuff. So as much stuff you can have, that's how you can, put stuff together. So we did one take, and within that one take, they weren't. They said, well, let's do another one. And he says, no. He says, you guys do whatever you do. I'm going back to my green room. And it was like, the production manager was looking around like, oh, what the hell? Like, that's not how we do this. But they didn't want to push his buttons. And he called the production guy, got Vince on the walkie-talkie, and Vince came down to our set.
No, did not succeed.
That wasn't a good. He says, "We're at WrestleMania. Damn it! What the hell's going on? What did I hire you for? You're the production manager." And he says, "Well, Donald said he was done. He was done." And Vince was like, and he didn't bother him. It was like we didn't retake anything. Because Trump said, just whatever y'all's, just, how y'all do work that stuff, just get my best side. And, cause the production manager says, hey, let's do another one. He says, well, here's Donald. He's talking about like, well, I think it went fine. But dude, you're not the production manager on this set. What they saw and what they were, they might have been looking for something like, hey, let's get another angle. But, now he said, we're done. and then you didn't see him no more until the shaving the head part come out. Till they came out. But yeah, man, it was crazy. Wow. And then I was like, wow, man, I got to see the Vince. You know what I'm saying? I got to see the super hot Vince. So I was like, man, I was telling myself, I said, man, Donald better not get me fired, man, because I ain't messed with that, man. I said, you better not get me fired, dude. I was like, you've been a real clown right now. So you're really clowning right now, because I said, I don't want this to end, because I've always wanted to be, when I know I was going into wrestling, I always wanted to be a part of WrestleMania. I don't know what.
Oh, yeah, that's the dream. That's the dream.
Yeah, and to be able to partake in it, because all the wrestlers go to WrestleMania. That's on the roster,
but not all
of them make it on the set of like actually doing something. Wow. I knew we weren't probably going to wrestle when Hornswoggle was part of Money in the Bank. I knew. I was like, oh wow, if he's part of that. And when I was seeing his kid, because Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Ken Kennedy, he did a slam. He slammed him from the back, put him on his back, and then went off the ladder. I mean, it was a big pop for Hornswoggle. Me personally, I wouldn't want to have done it.
No, I can imagine.
I like my feet to touch the ground as much as possible, and that ain't that often if I'm sitting in a chair. You know what I'm saying? so let alone to be on a 20-foot ladder. And then.
On OVW's 400th anniversary show, the Boogeyman made an appearance, losing to Ryan Wilson in a tables match. The Boogeyman returned to in-ring action when teamed with Kane during his feud with William Regal and Dave Taylor. This also marked the return of Little Boogeyman.
On paper, that should be a hell of a tag team right there, but didn't really work out that way.
Yeah. The feud would be short-lived, as Boogeyman and Little Boogeyman would then start another feud with Finlay and Hornswoggle. Boogeyman and Little Boogeyman were defeated in a mixed tag match by Finlay and Hornswoggle at Saturday night's main event, the 24th on June 2nd. The Boogeyman ended his tenure on SmackDown with a loss to Mark Henry in a squash match as part of Henry's new Path of Destruction gimmick,
which was briefly covered on my Paul Burchill story earlier. That's how they ended the pirate gimmick, was Mark Henry's Path of Destruction when he was leading him to his heel turn where he did the whole Hall of Pain gimmick.
Oh, yeah. After that match, Mark Henry then beat up Little Boogeyman, who was at ringside, and Henry gave him a body splash.
No.
Severely injuring him. Kayfabe, not real life, but...
Yeah.
On the June 11th edition of Raw, the Boogeyman was drafted to the ECW brand in the annual WWE draft.
Actually, forgot about that.
Yeah. This was around 2000, I think, 7.
Yeah.
The next day, he debuted for the brand and defeated Matt Striker, beginning a feud with him. On July 10th in New Orleans, the Boogeyman was a guest during a Striker's Classroom segment. And he was to be educated on worms. Only to be attacked by Striker's debuting enforcer, Big Daddy V.
No, number one, worms are not food.
That is not how Boogeyman taught that class. The Boogeyman was not seen for the next 3 weeks after Big Daddy V attacked him. Finally re-emerging on the July 31st episode with a new face paint design and black contact lenses to scare Big Daddy V off after he finished a match. Boogeyman was taken out by Big Daddy V from behind after a distraction from Striker a week later. On the August 14th episode of ECW, Boogeyman scored a disqualification victory over ECW champion John Morrison after Morrison shoved the referee. Boogeyman went on to went on to successfully team with CM Punk in Saturday night's main event.
There's a tag team. Boogeyman and CM Punk.
Boogeyman and Straight Edge. On August 18th against Morrison and Big Daddy V. On the August 28th episode of ECW, Boogeyman was one of the participants in the Fatal 4-Way match for a shot at Morrison's title. However, CM Punk was the victor.
Yeah.
On September 4th on ECW, Boogeyman defeated Matt Striker by disqualification when Big Daddy V interfered and went on to hit Boogeyman with a ghetto drop on the outside of the ring. That move name really aged well. On the September 18th episode of ECW, Boogeyman and Big Daddy V finally faced off in their first one-on-one match, which Boogeyman lost.
Yeah.
Boogeyman's return to wrestling action was initially delayed due to a torn calf muscle, but it had also been reported that he was having dental surgery for those missing teeth you talked about earlier in the show.
Yeah.
On the October 7th episode of ECW, a vignette was aired promoting the Boogeyman's return. Additional vignettes aired for a few weeks after that. On October 13th, 2008 edition of Raw, the Boogeyman made his return, appearing during a segment with Jackasses Johnny Knoxville, Chris Pontius, and of course the lovely named Big Dick Johnson.
Yeah.
Ending with the Boogeyman bringing live worms out of a bag and after putting them in his own mouth, spat them into the mouth of Pontius.
Yeah. I mean, that's just another Monday for the Jackass guys.
Yeah, that's like
nothing special there.
Thing that they've done that week.
Like just worms.
Yeah, just worms. Like
okay, I mean, yeah, I can do worms.
Normally we put scorpions down our pants, but
human.
Worms.
Oh, no human shit. Just worms. These worms they're not post-digested worms. They're just. This is a cakewalk.
Right. I hate Jackass. Anyways, the Boogeyman made his ECW return on the November 25th episode in a segment with John Morrison and The Miz. He made his return.
John Morrison.
Yeah.
Hey. Ho ho.
Back together again now, but that's future times. He made his return to in-ring competition on December 9th against Scott Reed, a local talent who he defeated with ease. On December 30th, he lost to John Morrison and The Miz in a no DQ match with Finlay as his partner, bringing him back.
Yeah.
But now they're friends. So
they're pals.
On the January 20th, 2009 edition of ECW, he defeated a man that we just talked about in the Hall of Fame, Paul Burchill, by disqualification. His first victory over a non-enhancement talent since returning to the brand. His last appearance on WWE programming was on the March 3rd episode of ECW, where he lost in a match against Kane. The next day, on March 4th, WWE announced that they had released Wright from his WWE contract.
No.
Wright realizes the crazy gimmick he created and talked a bit about it on the Ryback interview. Going back to that, it's folklore, and I've come to realize that and accept that. And like I said, me and Road Warrior Animal were talking about just last night. I was in Dallas, and there's a new program up there getting started. SDWE Fury. And Teddy Long and John Laurinaitis are running the show with a few other guys. Animal was talking, man, who would ever believe you would eat worms? And you're worth it because you run with it. You made that character, and that's coming from Animal, stated Wright.
Yeah.
As for the character itself, Wright discussed when it was first created and how it evolved. And he says, Wright and OVW, and that character has grown to the point where, as far you look at the growth of it, I first started out with 2 paint colors, red and black. And it was just in there for top stages. And there you go. That's the maturity of how things work in this business. Wright said before discussing the symbols of his character. Everything that Boogeyman does is in terms of governmental stages. Now, the characters have 3 layers. Trees. I started on that tree. That tree on my head, that's the tree of life. And those dots surrounding my face, black and yellow and white dots. Those are the forbidden fruits that have fallen off the tree. The black around my eyes.
I never realized the depth to Boogeyman. Go ahead, this is interesting.
That black around my eyes is the black owls that are looking through the night. That type of shit. So everything I've applied to that character has a purpose. I painted my whole face, and it's a 3-hour process.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I don't fully understand his tree explanation, but you know what?
I appreciate it. I appreciate that so much was put into.
Understands it,
He put 3 hours into what we would see as like a 3-minute segment. I can appreciate that.
I appreciate it too.
I remember he started adding some other colors eventually. Like he had like yellow on there at one point, I remember.
Yeah,
did he ever, do you have anything where he talked about the significance of the clock and things like that?
No, in fact, that's the last part of
I remember he also had like a smoking cane too.
Yes, he did.
He would come out where it looked like a stump fiddle, but it would come out in like it was like a cane that smoke would come out of, and it really was a cool presentation.
It was.
I know it was a silly character, but it was a cool presentation and very memorable.
Well, like I said, you don't really need to understand his reasonings for it to enjoy the batshit insanity that is the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
He will come and get you, and that's Martin Wright, the Boogeyman.
All right, yeah, and he still occasionally makes his appearances. He's made a few appearances since he was done as an active wrestler in the WWE. But
yep.
Yeah, he's
there.
Yep, definitely a memorable character, and then his little buddy Chris Holyfield,
best wrestler I've ever seen and talked to.
is yeah, good dude, and a perfect episode for this time of year. Steven, good job, buddy.
Thank you.
I think you handled this one pretty well. And now, with that said, I'm never letting you do this again.
Understood.
All right. Well, Steven, why don't you plug your pluggables?
You can find me on Dragon Blazer Productions on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes. And you can find me on Twitter at Dragon Blazer Pro.
And you can follow this podcast at PW Apologists on the Twitter. You can follow me at Craiger Atkins on the Twitter. And, well, I guess the only Steven,
I feel
you say it. You say it, Steven.
We love pro wrestling, and sometimes that's okay.
Sometimes it is.
Hey, if you like that video, please like and subscribe my production company, Dragon Blazer Productions. My name is Steven. You also might know me from the Rage and Blaze show as Blaze. So please like and subscribe.